All right, everyone, we'll just get started now. Hello, I'm Matt Johnson, and I'm the Civic Engagement Associate at the National Congress of American Indians, and I'd welcome you to our Civic Engagement webinar series. Today, we will focus on census operational updates, online response rates, and best practices for getting out the count in your area. We will highlight a few tribal response rates here and hear from the Minnesota Tribal Census Coalition Coordinator on the best practices for outreach in the 2020 census amidst the COVID-19 challenges. We are so glad that you're joining us today, and we encourage you to watch for our web series. We try to hold them monthly, and now we're trying to hold them bi-weekly, and we will focus on the importance of civic engagement in your tribal nations and feature a variety of topics and various guest speakers from time to time. I encourage you to join our listserv for announcements by emailing census@ncai.gov. We also announce our webinars on our social media and civic engagement broadcasts and list them on our website. If you missed any of our websites, the recordings are usually available on our NCAI YouTube page or on our website, IndianCountryCounts.org, under Events and Webinars. There we go. So here's an overview for our agenda today. I just provided the welcome, and our speaker today are going to be myself, obviously, and then also Sandra Mitrovich, who is the Wilma Mankiller Fellow on Civic Engagement from the National Congress of American Indians. And today our special guest speaker is Shelly Diaz, the Minnesota Tribal Census Coalition lead. Once the speakers are done with the presentations, we will reserve time for questions at the end and also an opportunity for attendees to share information about their own efforts and community related to census and voter engagement. Before we get started, however, I'm going to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's web event. So this is a depiction of the GoToWebinar's attendee interface, and it is made up of two parts: the viewer window on the left, which displays the presentation, and the control panel on the right. I'll quickly navigate on how to use the control panel so that you can readily participate in today's event. By clicking on the orange arrow, you can open and close your control panel, as you see here. Here is where you can find all the information about your audio connection. We recommend dialing in via phone rather than computer, as it tends to limit feedback. To dial in, you will find the number and access code here, along with your unique audio PIN. As you can see, all attendees are currently muted in listen-only mode. At the end of the presentation, we will open up for Q&A. At this time, please submit your questions via writing them in the question pane. As a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded. After the event, you will receive an email with a link to a short evaluation, and the recording will be available on our NCAI YouTube page and our ICC website next week. At this juncture, let's go ahead and get started. So just a real quick recap for those who don't know, although I believe most of you do know at this point. The National Congress of American Indians was founded in 1944 and is the oldest, largest, and most representative American Indian and Alaska Native organization serving the broad interests of tribal governments and communities. Indian Country Counts is NCAI's initiative to encourage all American Indians and Alaska Natives to complete the 2020 census. What is civic engagement, for those who don't know? Civic engagement means working to make a difference in the civic life of one's community and developing the combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make that difference. It means promoting the quality of life in a community through both political and non-political processes. We all know the importance of the census, but just again, to reiterate, the census is a powerful information source that significantly influences U.S. policy. It is the foundation of American democracy, determining the allocation of congressional seats and redistricting of voting geographies. Nearly $1 billion in annual federal resources are allocated to Indian country based on census data. Nationally, the U.S. Census Bureau estimates that American Indians and Alaska Natives living on reservations or in native villages were undercounted by approximately 4.9% in the 2010 census, more than double the undercount rate for the next closest population group. So on the screen here, you're going to see this is the current total response rates of the the whole U.S., not including obviously Alaska and Hawaii, which I couldn't fit into the picture, as of Monday. The only reason I didn't have something, I just wasn't able to have the time to put in the most recent information. But as you can see here, those states in the light blue are at least at 50 to 56%, which is a good number. And this map, of course, has been updated since I know that Massachusetts and Connecticut and a few other states have upped their numbers as well. Right now, the rate is hovering right below 50% of households. These percentages are all for households, not number of people. So you can see things are going relatively well, but we always want these numbers to be higher. I definitely want to see more blue than sort of the darker, orange and yellow. So with Minnesota being our focus state, I decided just to show how Minnesota is doing in terms of its response rates. And again, this is based off of Monday's data, so it is a little out of date, and I do apologize. But as you can see here, I have on the left-hand side, you have how they was the initial contact rate. And as you can see with the little key here, if their counties or tracts were in purple, that means they received an invitation in the mail to respond just for online. If they're in the green, they received the option to either respond either by paper or online. And then if they were in the yellow section, that means that they were hand-delivered packets. And unfortunately, with the current suspension of census field operations, and you can kind of see the correlation between the response rate and the first contact, with the field operations being suspended, many tribes did not receive their hand-delivered packet, the update leave as it's referred to. I believe the statistic I saw was that only maybe about 10% of update leaves actually received their paper forms before the suspension of census operations. So as you can see on the right-hand side, this again shows the response rates, and this is by county, and I will make sure to include the different reservations and tribal areas that the census counts. And as you can see, for example, the White Earth Reservation, as you can see on the left-hand side, is almost completely in yellow. And then if you notice there obviously those darker colors, which shows a lower response rate, while areas around St. Paul, are in a much higher color. And again, that's kind of based off the fact that we have unfortunately had this suspension in field operations, which has limited these tribal homes, households from receiving their paper form. Obviously, that doesn't mean that they can't fill it in online or over the phone, but there's a reason that they were handing them out in the first place. Also on this guide, I took the liberty of going to, and you can see there's a different web address in the bottom left corner here that shows the response rates for the specific tribal areas in Minnesota itself. And again, this is based off of data from Monday, so of course these numbers have changed, and as you can see in kind of the second and third row, it updated as I was taking these screenshots. But we've got, just so you know, there's 11 different ones that are currently being tracked in Minnesota: Bois Forte, Fond du Lac, Grand Portage, Leech Lake, Lower Sioux, Mills Lock, Prairie Island, Red Lake. I can barely read that one. I think it's Succompie, Upper Sioux, and finally White Earth. And as you can see, Fond du Lac is doing great, but a lot of these other ones, unfortunately, due to the suspension in the field operations, have not had that same kind of, have had the luxury or haven't had the ability to really respond. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't. It's just that we've got to make sure that we can help them out as best we can. So this right here is actually a picture of 3 states, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, who have actually had really low response rates as of Monday. And Montana's gone up a little bit, and Idaho is not on the lower end, but I wanted to kind of show some differences, as you can see. And again, this is the same kind of, again, you can find this on the URL that's below. But as you see, unfortunately, a lot of areas where the update leave is the option for first contact, those areas are showing the lower, really on the lower end of response rates. And unfortunately, as of right now, and we'll get into the timelines, but the field operations are going to be suspended for a longer period of time. And so it's going to be on us to figure out ways to really get the word out and figure out how we can get these folks to respond either online or over the phone, since unfortunately a lot of them were going to be receiving hand-delivered paper forms previously. But as you can see on the left-hand side, the areas that are in yellow, when you go to the right-hand side, you can see are among the lower response rates. And we'll be highlighting these as we go along through these web series, just to show, how the change in field operations is affecting response rates. With that, I'm going to actually turn this over to Sandra Mitrovic, as I mentioned, our Wilma Mankiller Fellow, who will talk to you a little bit more about the timeline updates. Sandra, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Matt. So many of you should be aware that there have been significant updates to our timeline, as you can note on the PowerPoint slide. We've adjusted those over to your right. You can look and see the important tribal dates that we really wanted to make sure that you're aware of. So, for example, and this just came out earlier this week in terms of the self-response phase, that's been extended to October 31st, as you can note there. And update leave, and that's kind of talking about the relationship to those field operations. That's been paused and won't resume until June 13th. And that's, Matt had referenced that a bit, that's also been one of the reasons we're noticing in many of our tribal areas that a lower response rate than others. The update enumerate right now, it's extended through October 31st. The one thing that we want to remind folks is that every day that we go through, as many of you know, we're adjusting daily to what we hear as it relates to our states and our tribes. And we also want to make sure people know that for us, as these transition, we are still also paying attention to what our tribes' policies are as it relates to them having situations where their reservation is closed or off to visitors. And so we're trying to really work with all of our partner organizations to remind them of that. So I just wanted to make sure I said that during this time. In terms of mobile questionnaire assistance, that's delayed as well, on a hold till June 1st. We want to make sure that people are aware that the phone, in terms of people calling in, I know that people have faced a lot of long wait times. We're still encouraging folks to call in. I know they're working on some of those glitches, and it's just kind of a matter of just, a little bit of patience right now with that, but we're going to try and do our best to consistently, again, stress our concerns about people having access. Next slide, please. So in terms of our frequently asked questions as relates to the COVID-19 or coronavirus, as we just mentioned, you'll notice that a lot of those activities have been extended or in the interim suspended, and that was on that previous slide as it relates to the operations. They're going to be very careful in the way that they resume the field operations, that the operations where people are coming in to do the census response, the paper drop-offs and things like that. And of course, with our tribal nations, as I already mentioned, we'll of course work with communities to ensure that when that all resumes, that we're being effective and being a good liaison between tribal governments to respect those rules that they have in place. As it relates to in-person activities, making sure to still promote health and safety of the public. So still practicing the PPE and social distance practices that we have in place right now and that are recommended. Once the 2020 census data collection is complete, just to remind folks, that can be a bit of a lengthy process. And so we want to make sure, because it does look at reapportionment, redistricting, and other statistical data products throughout the year that relates to hundreds of billions of dollars in the public and private sector. We want to make sure that that's accurate. To ensure the completeness and accuracy of the 2020 census, the Bureau is seeking some relief from Congress for an additional 120 calendar days to deliver final apportionment counts. So under that plan, that would extend the window for the field data collection and self-response, as we mentioned previously, to October 31st. And that would allow the apportionment counts to be delivered to the President by April 30th, 2021. and then the redistricting data to be delivered to the states no later than July 31st, 2021. So going back to just reminding folks with this extension, we're still obviously, in our count, many of you guys know at this point that our college campuses have closed, students have been sent home, specifically those students that were living in dorms or in housing that were had closed down a lot of those residential housing and sent those students home, or students that potentially were living off campus but near an apartment housing or other types of housing, they might have already also returned home. We're reminding folks that college students that are living on campus housing that are typically counted through their university as a part of the group quarters operation, you'll note that they still are going to be counting those folks, or still would like those folks counted on campus. And so they would be included in that. So you'll notice in the graphic on the left of your screen where it says on campus, your campus administrators will include you in their count. So you're good to go. Make sure that you're sharing with your friends and family to complete their own census. If you live off campus, you're going to fill out the census using the address, not the location you relocated to, but the address that you were existing at. If that was off-campus housing, you're going to make sure to include any of your roommates or your housemates, and you can still do that response online by phone or by mail. In terms of if you don't have your census ID, we're just reminding folks too, you can still complete your census without that. So don't allow that to be a barrier for you. So I know we've gotten a lot of questions about that, so we just want to make sure people know your college students still will be counted, especially those that lived in dorms in the group quarter count, but if they lived off campus, they need to make sure they still utilize that address that they were at. In terms of our counting incarcerated American Indians, any of those incarcerated persons, including juveniles, regardless of where they lived or in or outside of the state their prison is currently located, they're counted at that facility. Depending on the facility, the prison administration typically, or the prisoners themselves, are responsible for filling out that form. Obviously, in light of the COVID-19 challenges and how prison systems may be limiting that access, the administrators would be working to fill out that count because they want to take the necessary precautions to ensure still those social distancing policies within the prison system. Some states have passed laws requiring prisoners to be counted at their home addresses when drawing local legislative districts, but the Bureau this year, during this count, they will not assist in the recalculation. Those laws do not affect federal congressional districts. Just reminding folks of that. And it's, again, we've been asked the question, it's that where they were incarcerated as of that April 1st date.
Thank you, Sandra. We're going to pass it over to our guest speaker, Shelly Diaz. Shelly, are you there?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
All right, Shelly. Well, you go ahead and just let me know when you need me to advance the slide, and I will do that. So go right ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, Anin Buju, I'm Shelly Diaz. I'm a band member with the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. I'm also the coordinator for the Minnesota Tribal Hub. And the logo on the right side there, we have 11 liaisons from our tribal nations here in Minnesota. And we wanted to make more than just 2020 census working group, and we wanted to take this further and include all civic engagement, which is counting, voting, and just working on public policy, exercising our sovereignty. So that staff is our 11 tribes there, the feathers. So yeah, go ahead. So yeah, we formed back in May of 2018. Like I said, we are all appointed from our tribal officials, the liaisons between the tribal nations and the Census Bureau, to make sure we get a complete count of all of our tribal members. We grew out of the Minnesota Census Mobilization Partnership, which is a collective group of like 14 different organizations in Minnesota. And it's the foundations in Minnesota, along with the State of Minnesota Demographer's Office. We have our fiscal sponsorship provided by the Native Governance Center. We got funding through the Northwest Area Foundation and Blandin Foundations, as well as from the state of Minnesota. And we all took advantage of the mini grants that Indian Country Counts has laid out. So, we were meeting and strategizing on ways to reach our communities. And like everybody else, all our plans, the plug got pulled on all our plans when this COVID-19 crisis started. We were really sad because we got governor's proclamation and our Minnesota Indian Affairs recognition of March 21st, 2020 as being our the census powwow day. So if you want to turn it, go ahead, next slide. So I guess, so before I get into that, like Matt mentioned, Minnesota is #1 in the self-response rate. Our tribes, as you can see, I just pulled like stats from 3 of the tribes. Fond du Lac is ahead. They're at 50%. My tribe, Mille Lacs, were like at 28%, and then Red Lake is 1%. And the reason for that low number is they are one of the reservations that have indicated they wanted the update leave. So they didn't even get their census forms yet. And now I was just told on another call that they are encouraged to wait until this census or until the update leave people come. They can't even go online. They shouldn't go online because something will happen if they don't have a city-style address that it won't sync up in the system of counting them. So that's a whole nother webinar, I'm sure. So go ahead, next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So now that we have to shift our thinking and redirect our resources, we are looking at a lot of social media online presence. When our powwow got canceled, and not just because of this, but just because tribes, we are gathering people, we're not isolationists, and, this is pretty much against my nature of being isolated, but they have the social distancing powwow online. I don't know if anybody's seen that. People are just getting on and, getting together online and doing that. There's phone banking going on in the state of Minnesota. They have, access to different contact lists, and there's a way that we'll be able to get our own contact list and perhaps getting volunteers at this point to do some phone banking. We've been on different radio and television spots talking about census and how are we going to do this as a virtual and online method of messaging and encouraging people to be sure to complete their census forms. This week I delivered a bunch of stuff that I had, census swag that I had saved for our powwow, sitting in my garage, and I thought, well, why don't we, they're giving away meals every day from the school up on the reservation, and so I brought a bunch of bags and bottles and different chip clips and pens and all that to just include in the meal delivery. And on our reservation, it serves about 145 families, so that'll be a nice little chunk of messaging there. And then we're developing online challenges and raffles, live Facebook kind of census couch parties, do a pop-up Facebook Live event and give away prizes and have games and stuff. Let's see. Yeah. So here's creation by the Native Governance Center that talks about the census.
There is a count underway across the country. It determines where resources go and which communities are empowered. Historically, Native people have been shut out from the census process. We can't let that continue. We will be seen, heard, and counted. Taking the census lets the federal government know that we are still here, we are growing, and we count. Participating in the census is an act of sovereignty, and it reminds the federal government about their obligations to uphold our treaties. Think of the census as your commitment to provide for the well-being of future generations. Responding to the census makes us strong, but participating in the census is not just an act of sovereignty. It's also a way to secure needed economic resources for our nations. It's about the economic prosperity of our communities, housing, the growth of small businesses, access to healthcare, and educational resources for our children and grandchildren. In short, it's about our collective future and the resources we need to thrive. Yes, the 2020 census is important for everyone, but it's also about our sovereignty and the future of Native people. We will be counted.
And there I am. I'm the census hero in Minnesota. And note my shirt. It's my shirt that I got from Indian Country Counts for committing to be counted. And yeah, it was just a fun little PSA thing we did with the state. So I had a fun time. Finally OG, and I'm a supermodel now. Hey. Anyway, that's my presentation. And yeah, I guess things that I'm just worried about is the time extension, losing our momentum, and just running out of resources. Thank you.
It's very, yes, thank you, Shelley. And yes, I agree that 100% that our momentum, obviously, we don't want to let that slow. I know right now the response rates have kind of started to level off a little bit, but we really want to keep pushing that through. And part of the reason why we're doing this is to make sure that folks don't forget about this and they can still push this out. We've got a long time till Halloween, so let's make sure it counts. Not seeing any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to Sandra, who's going to continue on from here. So Sandra, you on?
Yeah. So I really want to echo, Shelley, I think one of the reasons why I'm so glad to have you on the call, one, I just know that you've been engaged in this work for so long. I absolutely love this picture of being a census hero and what that means in so many different ways, that everybody that participates in this, in a sense, can be a hero for their community. And that just really resonated a lot with me, because I think people do feel powerless right now. And so I think this is part of what we can do just within our households to bring that voice and recognition to our tribal count, and that's really important. Each of us can do our part. So I just want to say thank you for your leadership and your advocacy. And I know it's not just census. You made a very excellent point, especially with your logo, which I love, which is really talking about how do we rise? And we rise by being at the table and participating in these things, voter engagement, census, and just continuing to use those platforms. So thank you again. I just really appreciate it. Now the call to action, Shelley and other coordinators are doing this. They're doing a call to action, although we weren't expecting to do a lot of this virtually. We're expecting to do a lot in person as we do in our communities. We need to spend some of this time being inventive and doing this in other ways through drop-offs, like Shelley mentioned, being visible virtually if we can through Facebook Live or through webinars like we're on today or other things. And so we want to be thinking about how can we get our community to fill out the forms. We are going to have some of those challenges, though, and Shelley mentioned that in some of our communities that are those paper forms and what that's going to mean, lack of internet access. And so we do have some of those challenges. In our way, though, we can still be a good role, play an official role and be an ally and advocate in our community. We can also make sure our elected officials know what those challenges are and what we're hearing and what we could do, and make those suggestions to our other tribal partners in the state and at the national level. And so we know that this is going to be a longer time frame, and so we want to stay the course. And I think I want to echo what Shelley just said about maintaining and also elevating our momentum and how we're moving forward, because we know now there's this extended period of time, but doing that in collaboration and in partnership, and being mindful of where communities are at right now as it relates to their concerns and their worries. So we really also need to be present in that moment too. So let's make sure to continue to call. We're phone banking right now at NCAI. We're calling folks and connecting with them. If we get a voicemail, we leave a voicemail with updated information, but then we're mindful that we're going to be calling back. And so you may get a call from us in your community. First and foremost, we're calling just to check in and just be another voice that's checking in to say, how are you doing? Is there anything else that we can do? Can we elevate your message to anyone else? And then just kind of talking through with our census coordinators about next steps and plans of action and things like that. So again, we appreciate everybody's work. The examples that some people have utilized and just reminding folks, and Shelley mentioned this too, about swag items. This is important for us to know if there's additional things now that we're kind of transitioning and there's some additional things that people need, that maybe you're saying, we're shifting our focus, but we've utilized some of our grant funds to do these things, but now because we're going to have to change our outreach strategy, we may need to purchase some more ad space, like on a billboard, or maybe rent some time on a digital ad space. Let us know those changes. Let us know how we can support you and help you with that. Maybe you don't have a graphic designer that's great in your community that you can call upon to do something kind of fresh and new and innovative. We may have people in our network that can possibly help with that. So let us know if there's those other things that we need to help with. The other thing is, sometimes not all tribes do webinars and Zoom calls and all those kinds of things, or don't have websites. And so if you have those things where you want to host a Zoom call, or you want to host, like Shelley was saying, the challenge that she just mentioned, that's a whole nother webinar in itself. And so if you've never hosted one of those things and you want to do that for your community, but you want some technical support, let us know that too. Those are all things that we can help support in community. These were just examples of what some of the tribal nations have done in the photos below. It's important for our tribal leaders, like you see there with Yakima, that they, are visible and they're saying, hey, this is, we're in a leadership position. We're setting the example. This is what we're doing. You can get inventive and creative and create your own census products, logos and swag, as you see there, with the Native Pride, Native Counted, the shirts for the Indian Country Counts, if you're wanting to do that. And then and the last, they created again their own swag as it relates to the 2020 census. Examples from other tribal nations, just continuing again. There's those billboards that we talked about. I love this one. You count, we count, Native counts. And together we define our future. I love that especially because for me, it just kind of reminds me that you're more likely to pay attention to something that resonates with you in your community. And so I love how people have changed up, their bags that they've been given out, different poster boards that are, going on lawns. People have gotten creative and put magnetic signs on their vehicles. They've personalized, again, shirts and signage, stickers, like I am Washoe and I count stickers. So these are all really, really important things that we want to support. And again, let us know how we can support you in that.
And I'll jump in, Sandra, and just say that, yeah, especially now with a lot of our transition where we can't be in person, sometimes a simple yard sign or simple sign in a window can be enough to inspire folks. I mean, we at NCAI, just before, the whole COVID broke out, right around Valentine's Day, one of our folks in our office put just a cute little bear with a sign saying Happy Valentine's Day, and the person next door or across the street from us started putting up signs. So it was like a fun little back and forth. So there are all kinds of ways that you can inspire folks, especially in this time where we're a little more isolated and not being able to interact in person. Sometimes a sign like that can be a real inspiration for folks.
So one of the other ways, thank you for that, Matt, and I have to tell you that a lot of other bears started popping up in windows for other reasons across the country, and that was pretty cool. The Native Youth Challenge update, we wanted to remind folks this Youth Challenge was extended through the 17th. And so what this is to give our youth, obviously, a voice and a chance to, get involved in the 2020 census. That we had announced this as a social media challenge to Native youth under the age of 25. You'll notice there in the graphic, they can provide a TikTok or an Instagram post, video with the hashtag #ICountChallenge. So that way we can collect all of those. And we have some amazing prizes to be able to give out to folks. And we want to definitely just inspire our youth. Again, this is the time to really get them involved in these conversations. And then we're taking those last entries of this week. So, definitely encouraging folks to participate. But I also want to talk about, in terms of digital participation, I have been absolutely impressed by how many people, Shelley mentioned the social distancing powwow, and if you've looked at the numbers of participants that get on those virtual powwows, has just been so inspiring. And it's not just across our country and our tribal nations, it's global. And it's inspiring other cultures that are putting in their dances and participating. We also have seen with Census, we've seen Census raffles where people have shared their I completed the census selfie and they've been entered into a raffle drawing. We've seen where people have done what are called census mini concerts, and they've done their own concerts, and they've worked with local DJs to host a DJ hour for census. We've had different influencers that have come on and done story time. So I joined a Native virtual storytelling event last night, which was wonderful. But hosting virtual storytelling hour and also talking about census would be another great way.
Hey everybody, it's Matt again. Okay, the next slide has a video on it, and I think I can get it to play. I just would make sure that everyone who has been presenting go on mute. I'm going to go on mute as well, and just hopefully that should work, because I was playing around with it and I realized that it's working, and I can hear myself now. So I'm going to play it. Give me 1 sec.
Let us be heard.
Let us be seen.
You're Indigenous youth 25 and under. You can get a free smartphone, wireless headphones, or tablet by entering the hashtag #ICountChallenge, sponsored by NCAI, National Congress of American Indians. Why not win a free smartphone, headphone, wireless headphones, or tablet? All you gotta do is upload a video and say why Indigenous youth matter and hashtag #ICountChallenge. You guys do matter, so let the world know.
Hopefully everybody was able to hear that and there wasn't a crazy echo or anything like that. Okay, worst case scenario, no sound. You can find that on Twitter. But I apologize if there wasn't able to hear folks. All right. Well, we're at the call to action, and as Sandra had mentioned, this is the time. We got a long self-response phase going till October 31st. And, there are many ways, especially with the coronavirus, there's many ways that we can reach out to folks, not just in person, but online and over the phone. by mail, even sometimes send in mail. I know there's a lot of talk about the post office and, maybe getting there, but, sending a letter in the mail might be a great way to really get folks as well. And sorry, I'm stepping on Sandra's toes here, so I'll let Sandra jump back on, but just wanted to, say that, hey, I would say that using the response maps is a great way to help really motivate folks, especially in this time where we really don't have a lot of sporting activities or, ways to kind of distract ourselves. Maybe just getting a competition, between your local community and another neighboring county or something like that might be a great way to really boost census rates.
So, Matt, I think your great call to action that you just did, and I apologize for the technology in terms of the sound for videos. Sometimes the videos, for whatever reason, we can't get the sound to play through webinars, but we'll work on that and make sure for our next webinar in a couple of weeks we iron those things out. But definitely go onto our IndianCountryCounts.org page, and we have uploaded several videos that people can share virtually and participate in. You'll notice there we did our Census Week of Action, and that started with our phone banking, which that's just going to continue. That's something we're going to continue just to stay connected to everyone. Our webinar series, we've transitioned our webinar series to more of a civic engagement series, and we'll get into that in just a second. Because we, as Shelley mentioned, we have a lot of other things going on too that we need to be paying attention to as it relates to voter engagement. And then our I Count Youth Challenge was extended again this week to the 17th, and then our tribal census resources. We're going to be uploading a lot to our webpage, and just because it's a good place for us to be able to put things in one location. But if at any time you ever have a challenge where you can't get something off the webpage or you can't access it, please let us know. We are, as we like to say, accessible, I feel like, round the clock. We want to be for our tribal nations, and so if there's something we need to do to get that to you in a different format, let us know. Next slide. So this is where we'll be providing policy updates as it relates to our administration in terms of asking to extend that deadline for the Census Bureau to report its state counts to the president to April 30th, as we mentioned before, and sending redistricting data to states by July 31st. The last stimulus bill allocated $400 million to election security grants, which can be used broadly, including that expansion of vote by mail options and early voting, as well as to clean the polling facilities. Obviously, that's a new challenge for us going into this election, and to conduct public education campaigns. The Election Assistance Commission has the mandate to send out the funds to the states within 30 days of the stimulus bill being passed. And so far, all but 2 states have requested the funds or asked for extensions. This additional funding to the $425 million, this was additional funding to the $425 million that was included in the funding bill that was signed into law at the end of 2019. Please visit eac.gov for more information. As the next stimulus bill is going to be discussed, Democratic members are pushing for much more funding for election assistance. You've probably seen that in some of the communications that have gone out via email, or if you're on any of the listservs as it relates to voter protection, to prevent voters from risking their health, to make sure that we are getting that support, whereas there may be other lawmakers or folks that are not necessarily supporting those measures. So if you're not aware, other folks that have voter task force that give updates pretty regularly, the Native American Rights Task Force, the Voter Rights Task Force with NARF, the Native American Rights Fund, they provide a lot of updates, and especially as it relates to policy, on their website. And so I would encourage folks to visit that as well. Next. There. And then our elections update. So if you're not, I'm sure many are following, but if you haven't been able to hear some of these things, so Bernie Sanders has officially suspended his campaign and endorsed Joe Biden for the Democratic nomination for president. It sets up a Trump versus Biden race in November. Nearly all primaries from mid-March through April have been delayed to May or June due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Wisconsin has been the only state to have a primary during the height of the pandemic. Some of you may have been following that as well. It produced a lot of tension and obviously difference between the Democratic governor and Republican-controlled legislature over in-person and absentee voting, and have rulings by the state and Supreme Courts. And I think that's a really important case to follow for folks if you're looking for how states are going to be looking at the way they do their elections, and states that are currently looking into expanding their mail-in and absentee voting options. Democratic lawmakers are pushing for more funding to assist with those, as we mentioned previously. But of course, again, with everything else, this is something to follow as we go. And we'll be trying to, as we shift these webinars, we'll be following this as well and providing those updates within our webinar series.
And just to jump on real quick for what Sandra said, if you had seen anything about what happened in Wisconsin, it really was a thing where, as great as it has seen people going out and exercising the right to vote, the fact that they were risking their health to do that is something that I think we all can say is not worth. No one should have to die to vote. And so the good thing is a lot of states with bipartisan governors, whether they're Republican or Democratic governors, are really looking at how they can change things. And the hope is with the current funding that is coming from the stimulus bill and potential future funding, that they'll be able to find ways to mitigate these concerns and make sure that these laws or these elections happen smoothly without a risk to one's health. So this brings us to the end of our presentation, and now we obviously want to open it up for questions, comments, and obviously we want folks to reach out about any of the things that they have been working on in their communities and their travel as it relates to census. And again, I apologize for the video. The best laid plans, folks. I'll just say that I thought it would work fine. I know we did already have one question here, and I'm going to pull it up here, and it was from. Let me pull it out here so I can see. It was from Kayla, and she asked, "Will we be coming out with messaging for tribes regarding update leave and waiting for an enumerator?" Definitely, we're going to be working on that. Right now, our biggest thing is that we really are trying to get answers from the Census Bureau about their plans with the update leave. As you mentioned previously, it's delayed until June 13th is when they're going to begin to actually hand out those forms. And they're still, at this point, not going to change they have not made any changes. And I've asked about this and been confirmed through other groups that they are not going to be sending anything in the mail to a P.O. box. As frustrating as that is, because I know a lot of folks use P.O. boxes as a way to get their mail, the Census Bureau has not made any changes or has really wanted to make any change when it comes to using P.O. boxes as a way to get folks out there. We're trying to determine, and Sandra's probably been the hammer on this when it comes to this, is just trying to figure out how is the Census Bureau going to be working with these reservations who are basically completely closed off and not allowing any outsiders to come in for understandable reasons. And so Dee Alexander, who's the head of the tribal specialists, we're trying to work with her and trying to get an answer on this, and we definitely want to get messaging out to folks on that. Any other questions or comments? All right, it's all quiet out there, so everyone's questions, I'm sure, are completely answered.
Well, Matt, can I jump in real quick?
Of course, go ahead, Sandra.
One of the things I wanted to mention, so we in our civic engagement broadcast, we'll be shifting those a little bit too. Those are bi-weekly. So what we've tried to do is set up where we'll have a webinar this week. Next week, you'll get a broadcast from us, a civic engagement broadcast via email from us. And so we're trying to do that so we're offsetting just in case because things are changing so much day by day, so that consistently every week you're hearing from us on updates. And so I think a lot of the things that both that Shelley mentioned, challenges they've seen just not only in their state, but as you're looking at in terms of the mail-in, and we understand obviously the issues that that presents, again, for our tribal nations as it relates to our ballots, mail-in ballots. We want to make sure that we're constantly following this messaging. And so we will be sending out some more messaging regarding these items in next week's broadcast. Those broadcasts go out. Sometimes we shift the broadcast between a Thursday and a Friday, and that's because we don't really want to oversaturate everybody's email. So one suggestion I would make, if you haven't done this already within your email box, I know we do it so that we kind of streamline our stuff, is creating a file that's like Civic Engagement Broadcast or NCAI Civic Engagement Broadcast or something, so that you kind of can find those. Because I know if you're like me and Matt, by noon we probably got a ton of emails in our inbox, and we're trying to go back to emails that maybe we might have not been able to see or that we need to reference. And so that would just be one suggestion, so that we constantly stay in touch. And then again, of course, if you have things that you want us to share in those broadcasts to get out to our listserv, that go out to our tribal nations and to our civic engagement listserv, we are more than happy to share those things that you're doing. And it doesn't have to be a challenge that you're facing. It could be a solution that you found. It could be something that you found that works really well, that you want to share out with other tribes and maybe see if they can utilize it. So
great point, Sandra. We really are trying to both be constantly updating you, but not overloading you to the point that you get so tired of us that you don't want to read our information. So that, as she said, we're trying to do it like 1 week is a webinar, the next week is going to be sort of our broadcast, and we kind of that's the plan going forward. As you mentioned, it's going to be probably census heavy for the beginning, but obviously as we move through the year, it's going to probably maybe shift a little bit more towards the native vote side of things. But we really want to be able to answer as many questions as we have, try to get information back to folks. Kayla, you did have a great question about messaging, and I think that's something, again, we're working on getting guidance, because we don't want to tell folks one thing and then turns out that's not true or that's not correct. So that's always our biggest caution, is putting out incorrect information or on disinformation or misinformation is referred to. Speaking of which, I should say that we here at NCAI, we work with a lot of different coalitions on checking to make sure that we're keeping an eye out for misinformation or disinformation as it relates to the census. A lot of times at this point there was some misinformation as it relates to the stimulus package, and you have to fill out your census form to get your stimulus check, which is not true. But things like that, we're keeping an eye out. A lot of it usually gets it doesn't get very far, but it's always something we worry about, and so we're keeping an eye on things. Thankfully, there really hasn't been a lot out there. A lot of it usually has to do with the question on citizenship, which obviously is not an issue when it comes to our tribal nations here, because we were all here a heck of a lot longer before the U.S. government got here. But that's one thing that I would just say that we also keep an eye out. We don't always want to obviously broadcast this on either in our broadcast. We don't want to be pushing that information out for folks, but obviously if we see something or if you run into something too. I know Shelley, she actually reached out to us a while back because there was, right before the census started, there was a mailer that was paid for by the Republican National Committee that said census on it, which obviously confused people and made people think that was the census. So, that was something that was brought to our attention, and luckily people were very quick on that, and that got squashed very quick. Actually, I was at a committee hearing, and the census director was there, and 3 different lawmakers brought it up to them and showed it to them. It was like, you need to do something about this right now. So thankfully, we have a lot of people working on this. But if you run into any misinformation or disinformation or information where you're not sure, please reach out to us, and we will be happy to run that information down, make sure to get you an answer, as well as make sure we alert the proper people to make sure that information is squashed as quickly as possible, particularly if it's on any of the social media outlets like Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions at this point, and looks like we're almost right at 4 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and just yes, Shelly.
Hey, I just want to say real quick to you and Sandra, thank you for all you guys do. You guys are great leaders, and I just really thankful that you guys are here, you and your organization, NCAI, and all that.
Well, thank you, Shelly. We appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And I can't stress enough, I was just on messaging with my tribe earlier, and I just kept telling them, we're here together. Just, let us know what you need. And that really helps. And so I know we can always call on you, Shelly, and others that are on the phone, Lindsay and Kayla and Ricky in California and everybody. I can't thank you all enough too. You guys are just inspiring, and Matt and I know we can always call on you too. So thank you.
Yes, and just want to thank you so much, and Shelly, just thank you so much for taking your time out today to speak with us, provide those slides, provide information on there, and thank you, Sandra, as well, for taking the time to help out, not only help out, I should say, but to present here as well. We will be, as you can see, just here's our contact information for the Indian Country Counts website. We're trying to keep that up to date as possible. As well, if you need to reach out to us at all, you can reach us at our census@NCAI email, and you can check our Twitter account as well, which is @NCAI1944 for more information and great graphics and things like that as well. Actually, I think there's a tweet storm going on right now, or I was going on about pushing out for the census, so we definitely are making sure that we do that as well. So with that, thank you everybody so much. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and obviously stay safe. Wash your hands, use that Purell and all those hand sanitizers, and make sure that you stay safe.